Hello and welcome. My name is Ugochukwu, but you can call me Ugo. Thanks again for joining me today. Today I'd like to discuss about speaking your truth and why it's important that you do it and you do it fast enough because you don't have enough time. Yes. So what do I mean by speaking your truth? For every person here on earth, for every person you out there, each and every one of us is fashioned within ourselves, within the structure of our DNA, the structure of our cells, the structure of our nature. We are structured in such a way that we have a unique personality that is embedded in the genetics of our biology that requires us, that enables us to discover a truth in the universe. The universe in itself is constructed in such a way that it has within the ether of the universe, within the complex system of the universe, there are truths out there that requires the uniqueness of your being to be discovered. Now, the reason why it is important for you to discover these truths and profess them in time is because your job in the world is to engage the world and discover these truths and then announce them. When you discover these truths and then you announce them, they become your legacy here on earth. They become the reason for your existence. They are actually the reason for your existence. And so, if you successfully discover your truth and then announce it to the world, you have successfully established your legacy here on earth. And it's very important because the danger that we have as we go through life is that we are usually put in a structure, we are usually put in a system, in a culture that encourages people to go through life conforming to norms, conforming to conventions, and just appearing to have no real significance here on earth. We are encouraged to be conformists. We try as much as possible to do things the general way, to do things the acceptable way, so that we can generally find life very easy. But the truth is that life can be very difficult. And so the most important thing in life is going about your life in a way that allows you to discover your truth and then to announce it to the world. It is important that you do go about life in this way. Now, the world is constructed in such a way, over time it's been constructed in such a way that we've put walls, a lot of walls, border walls in around life. We've put border walls in our lives, and so we are encouraged to go through life and try as much as possible to behave ourselves. We are encouraged to behave ourselves instead of to explore ourselves. We are supposed to explore ourselves so that we can rediscover the very truths that are in nature and then announce it to the world. And so we are encouraged to go through life and not to bash and try as much as possible to conform and not to bash against the walls so that we don't offend anybody, so that we can appear politically correct. We can appear as people who are gentle, innocent, and generally well behaved. But the danger with this kind of existence is that you go through life and you live a kind of life that lacks any sense of exploration, any sense of adventure. You go through life and your existence actually is marked with a certain level of banality that is rooted in mediocrity. And it's a very dangerous place to be in. Now, the reason why we fall for this trap is because whenever we attempt to speak our truth, we are constantly reminded, we are constantly cautioned not to speak out. Most times because we are reminded that we have to validate our truth. We have to prove that the truth that we are about to speak, that the truth that we wish to speak is a fact. But the problem, the danger is, in life, majority of the truths, majority of the things that we do in life do not actually require that you validate your truth before you go about it. The real issue is you don't actually need to validate your truth. You only need to substantiate it. So what's the difference between validation and substantiation? To validate actually means to make something legally and or officially acceptable. To establish the basis of something so that everybody can now accept the validity of that stuff that you're talking about. What this actually means is that when you are seeking validation, you are actually looking for a basis whereby you can bring everybody together to agree on that which you have professed, or to agree on your position, so that everyone can come together and say, hey, this is the real thing, this is the real deal. But the danger is, on many occasions, we do not have the time or the opportunity or the resources to validate our truth. So when we talk about validation, we are talking about facts, establishment of facts. What's the difference between fact and truth? A fact is simply things as they are observed to be. Now, when you talk about observation, observation is simply a controlled experience. It's a controlled perception. When you talk about perception, perception happens with the senses. Observation happens in a controlled environment. It is a controlled perception. And so when you go to the lab and you are researching a particular phenomenon, what you are expected to do is that you don't observe with direct sensing. So you could have laptops there, you can have high processing computers there, you can have equipment that will allow you to reduce the level of error that you would have encountered if you had tried to perceive that or to observe the phenomenon with your ordinary senses. And so in a controlled perception, it reduces the amount of error. But the thing there is that you are still perceiving. You are still perceiving with your senses. So your senses are still involved. Now, the issue with your senses being involved is that your perceptual faculties are actually subject to error, in the sense that you can actually be perceiving something and you are not seeing the whole picture. And so when we talk about facts, we are talking about things that have been observed and things that have been perceived, but by the very fact that these things are within the framework of our perception, it means that we do not have a full picture of these realities. And that is the reason for having scientific facts being updated with time. There was actually a time that in human history when we thought that the earth was flat, and it was a scientific fact as at then. There was a time that we thought that the sun rotated around the earth, and it was a scientific fact. But with time, we continue to research and we continue to discover that these previously held facts are not actually the truth out there. So we had to update our facts. One basic characteristics of fact is that it is updatable. We can update it. We update it with time. And so that is why every phenomenon in science is subject to verification, is subject to update, is subject to constant research so that these facts can be updated. So by the very fact that facts are updatable means that they do not give us the whole picture, that they do not paint the whole picture. And that is why it's important that you should not base your life on facts. You should actually base your life on truth. So what's the difference between truth and fact? When we talk about truth, truth is about something that is useful. It is basically a message that is useful. So when we talk about truth, I talk about truth in the sense that you should not try to validate your message. You should actually try to substantiate your message. Substantiation of message actually means to establish the essence of your message, to establish the truth value of your message. The essence of something talks about the whatness, the what that determines that thing, the real stuff within your message that determines it. And so when we talk about the real stuff, we are talking about the real value that your truth, that your message seeks to deliver. So this is why it is important that in speaking your truth, you do not go about looking to establish, to validate your message. You should actually go for substantiating your message. To substantiate your message means to establish the truth value, the usefulness of that message to another person. So that is how you determine whether your truth is useful or not to another person. You determine it by looking at the value that it promises for another person. And that allows you to see the full picture. That allows you to see the usefulness of your message to the person that you're delivering it. A fact in itself is simply a validated opinion. So when I establish that I have discovered a particular thing and that it is factual, I give people the procedure, the methodology that I use to arrive at that truth, and people go through the same methodology and they arrive at the same facts. But what if my perceptual structures, the methods that I use are actually flawed in themselves? The people who go through the same process will arrive at the same flawed conclusion. And so that is the reason why we see facts that have been established over the years being updated with time. So what it means that you cannot establish your life based on facts because they are updatable. They do not paint the whole picture, and they are facts in and of themselves do not promise any value. So the job of the scientist is to establish the facts. Our job is to derive the truth value from that fact, is to derive the truth from the fact. And the truth from the fact is that which promises to solve a particular problem for the other person. The truth from a fact is that which promises a value that can be substantiated in its usefulness to the person that is utilizing it. So a very practical example is that a scientist can establish that the coronavirus can be transmitted when somebody coughs or when somebody sneezes. It is now behooves on us to now create masks to wear that will allow us to overcome that, to prevent that from happening. So the job of the scientist is to establish the fact, whilst our job is to derive the truth from the fact. Now, your mind and your brain is designed in such a way that it has the capacity and the capability to derive truths even before the facts can be validated. That is the nature of your mind. Your mind has the capacity to derive truths from the universe, in engaging the universe, in interacting with the world, in interpreting the world. Your mind, your perceptual faculties have the capacity to derive truths whose facts are not yet validated. But the thing there is you should not allow yourself to be weighed down by the issue where your facts are not yet established. You should base on the substantiation of your truth as the go-ahead order that you need to now profess your truth to the world. The reason for this is this: truths usually come before facts. A good example is this. If you look at the scientists, you will notice that usually at the start of their scientific journey or adventure or their research, they usually begin this journey with a hunch of something that they have perceived in their mind, something that they think is actually possible, something that they think could be the result of a particular thing. Now, sometimes they might arrive at validating their truth. That's validation, that's hunch that they have. They might get to the point that they're able to validate it. At other times, they might not be able to validate it, but they validate or something else, or they discover some other truth. So the point there is, in most cases, you cannot embark to validate nothing. You must embark on something that you already have a hunch about. You embark to validate a truth that is actually nagging on your mind. So it's important that you try as much as possible to develop the character, to develop the ability to believe in your truth. Because it is one thing to have your truth, it is one thing to have a conception of your truth, it's another thing to believe in it. Your capacity, your ability to believe in your truth and to speak it to the world, to a large extent, enables you to utilize that truth in the service of others. So do not be swayed down, do not be dismayed when people try to put your message down, to try to tell you that your truth has not been validated. Once you can substantiate the usefulness of your truth to someone else, to the other person out there, and to show how useful, how valuable that truth could be to another person, that is the basic thing that you need in establishing that your truth is worth announcing. It is worth talking about. So that is my message for you today. Try as much as possible not to allow the cultural notions, the conventions in the world, and people's opinion about your message to prevent you from actually announcing your truth. It It is important that once you are able to conceive your truth, the only thing you need to do is to substantiate the usefulness of that truth to the next person. And once you can do that, you are ready to go. Because while you are there waiting for the truth to be validated, which could take a longer period of time for you to do, someone out there needs it. So I encourage you today, go out there in the world, go out, speak your truth to people. The world is waiting for you. Someone out there is eagerly waiting to listen to your truth, to engage your truth, and to become better off having met it. Thank you so much for joining me today, and I look forward to seeing you in the next video. Thanks.